You Fast Enough by Harsha and Aaron. Within our presentation, we go over the game flow, our game design, and the three main parts of our game, part A, part B, and part C, corresponding to the main menu, the game menu where the actual gameplay takes place, and the exit. Our general flow starts with the main menu I said before, where then the user can then choose either an easy difficulty, medium, or hard difficulty in game mode, which will eventually lead over to the game over screen when time runs out, as you will see later. From there, the user will then have an option to play again or exit. When the user chooses to play again, or in this case try again, we will go back to the main menu where the user will have the chance to choose another game mode and continue this infinite cycle, representing that, or rather parallel to those of games which just infinitely go on trying to beat a high score. If the user exits, the user exits. The the main the main menu is as seen over here. We have the instructions panel, including all instructions for the user, and then the three buttons or three game modes chosen: easy, medium, and hard, with the high score below. Um, yes. Next, we have the game. We have the actual game menu here, which the user will then play around with. As seen above, is the text is the score box, which shows how many times the user got it correct, memory correct. Then the timer represents how much time the user has before the game will end, and we have the hints button, which allows the user to have a quick glimpse at the randomly generated text. The start button, which is the button that starts off the entire game process, and the menu button, which is there just in case the user wants to leave midway, or if the user accidentally clicks on a different game mode but wants to leave the current game screen. We have the initial text which shows up. This is the randomly generated numbers or string or alphanumeric. And we have the user input then, where the user will input numbers or strings depending on the game mode. As seen over here is the game over screen. This screen comes up when the user runs out of time and represents both the score and number of levels the user has gone through. The score represents how many times the user has correctly inputted the right number of string or alphabets. The number of levels, however, represents the amount of times the user has generally played the game, regardless if it's a successful attempt or an incorrect attempt. As seen over here, the exit button represents the quit button, where the user will then leave the game, whereas the play again button would represent the user going back to the main menu and repeating the entire game process again. Here are some snippets of code from the part A, which is the main menu screen. The first box, as we see over here, is the actual game mechanic, where we actually run the entire game in a while loop until we make the game run the boolean variable false, which then will delete the loop. Over here we see over here we see uh, a rectangle and text within the rectangle, um, showing the game title and also instructions on which game mode to choose. This big chunk of code represents all the text instructions the user will get as to operate the game. And finally, this if statement just basically represents which state the game is in, whether it's in the easy game mode, the medium game mode, or the hard game mode. Now we come to the actual game mechanic. Within the game mechanic, however, or rather within the entire game itself, we have another button. We have something called a buttons class. This buttons class is very crucial and very acts as like a backbone to the entire game, because this allows us to create all the buttons in the game. Right now, we see the draw function, which takes in a mouse input from the user and also creates the button's actual rectangular shape. Under that, we have the button rect collision point, where we check if the mouse is collided with the button rectangle, and if it did, we have the button actually trigger an action, and if not, if the mouse button has been released, we um, avoid having the button run infinitely. And then lastly, as in Pygame, we draw the text to the screen within the rectangular box. Finally, this bit inside of a game mechanic, or rather the most important bit of a game mechanic, is the text input. As seen over here, we check if the event type within the event handler of all events within Pygame is a text input. If it is a text input, we take in the input as a string and also as a list for the sake of comparison later. We then check if we then again check if the type is of a key down, meaning that if the user has pressed a key, and then check if the key is a backspace, so that we can remove letters which are incorrectly typed in by the user, both from the text and also list as seen by the pop function. We then also check if the key is a enter key or a return key in this case. We're doing the same operation. This checks if the user, this is done when the user is wanting to check if the answer is correct or not. And if it is correct, we increment their score and show some visual changes that there is a there's a correctness to the answer, or red if it's not. Lastly, the game over screen. As mentioned before, this screen shows up when the time is run out on the user. Over here, we see a function defined over here that shows all of the game over elements, and what is shown over here represents The game will text the high score and levels the user has accomplished. The play again button is then overused by calling the button's class from earlier, and loops back to the main menu. And finally, the exit button, as mentioned before, is the quit button. Thank you.